Everyone has something to share, in either wisdom, story, or logic, and it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people, unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and store of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody here back to the Missing Link. Today we're going to talk to someone who's into the mystic arts. Life is the game, the altar is the board. Sometimes games are the game. How are you doing today, Qarin Joshua?
Doing really good. Thank you very much, Jesse, for hosting me here on your show. Yeah, good to meet you. And hey, guys, welcome in.
Awesome. Nice to meet you as well. Why don't you start off with telling us about yourself, telling us about your journey, a little bit about your background, education, what part of the world you grew up in, what part of the world you're in now, anything that you want the audience to know about yourself, especially if they're hearing you here for the first time.
Okay, so first of all, I'm 25 years old. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. I'm from the Republic of South Africa. What else is there to know about the basics of me? Unisexual, bisexual. I've been practicing mystic arts since I was like 14 years old. That's when I got into it. That's when I became obsessed, for lack of a better word, became obsessed with magic and mystic arts, mysticism. But I've only been like practicing it professionally and providing services for others since 2018. Regarding my education, I guess I got standard education. I was homeschooled through primary school and high school. I've got SATs. I didn't score fantastically. I got a pretty average score, 1,580, I think, on my standard SAT. Got some basic apprenticeship. I have a little bit of an apprenticeship in hairdressing and beauty therapy. Apart from that, and also in construction, like my mom is a beautician, so the beauty therapy came from that side. My dad's construction manager, so that side, the construction and carpentry and masonry comes down from his side. I'm Catholic. There we go. That's what I missed. I'm Catholic by culture and heritage, but I'm not practicing. I wasn't christened or confirmed. I go to church sometimes with friends or family on specific occasions like Easter or Christmas, things like that. Yeah. If there's anything else that you think I should share with the audience, let me know.
Did you go to did you have a religious upbringing when you were younger? Like, did you go to the Catholic Bible schools and all that kind of stuff?
So I did have religious upbringing, but my mom wasn't Catholic. She converted to Christianity, but she didn't want to be Catholic. She didn't want to do the whole Catholic Church thing. So I was raised pretty non-denominational Christian, going from this church to that church to that church, as my mom was figuring out, where she fits in with this new Christian crowd, I guess.
That makes sense. We hear a lot of, horrible stories that happen through the churches, to people and, children and things. Did any of that stuff happen to you through your church?
So if I look back at my time with church, it was very lonely. There's all these like psychological barriers that everyone keeps around themselves. They judging each other, so they're trying to hide all of the things that are against Christianity, I guess, from each other, and it creates this distance and this lack of connection between everybody in the church spaces. So I didn't personally witness any kind of sexual abuse or abuse in general. But it was just a very oppressive atmosphere. On another note, though, there were specific churches in Hartbeespoort Dam, which is like Pretoria area, a bit north from where I am now. That church, there was something about that church that was liberated, where the people would sing and dance and openly just express themselves vulnerably. And I really thought that was beautiful. fantastic. Similar vibes I found in Harare, Zimbabwe. So as much as there was like negativity within the church and certain churches having a lot of oppression, there were also other churches that are very liberated that have moved past that crap.
Yeah, I sounds hypocritical of the first set of churches, how they tell you to follow by these rules and everybody breaks the rules, but everybody hides them breaking the rules from everybody else in the church. So it's like sounds like one big soup of hypocrisy.
It's not even a democracy because nobody gets to vote for who's in charge.
Yeah, no, hypocrisy.
Oh, hypocrisy. Sorry, I misheard you.
No, that's okay. But I've seen some churches where they sing and they dance, and most of them that I've gone to are people that have like darker skin. They're like dark skin churches. They're singing and jamming, and it's like a good
Oh,
old
yes.
time to like come there, and it's so different than the churches that come and they just preach to you and tell you how horrible you are and how much you're a sinner, and then come back the next week, say a few Hail Marys and, absolve yourself of your shitty behavior. And then you just go on the next week and do the same thing.
Yeah, I guess it is. But, even though I've separated myself so much from Christianity and Catholicism, the practice of confession I still find really valuable. No, not necessarily going to a church and confessing to a priest, but to just acknowledge to myself, like if I'm feeling guilty or if I'm feeling shame over something that I've done or said, then to actually just, instead of trying to justify myself or find reasons why I'm in the right and the other person deserved it, to just acknowledge where I'm at fault and what I've done wrong and accept that and just be like, hey, I forgive myself for that. And I wish that the other person could forgive me for it as well.
Yeah, my
I find
girlfriend
that to be
just,
really valuable.
yeah, totally. My girlfriend just commented, she says my favorite part of church was the worship, dancing, music, soaking, etc. The part where you just feel over being taught, you know,
Mm.
for sure.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
that's exactly what I liked about the church is that I didn't absolutely hate.
So, mysticism, what is that to you? You're into the mystic arts. You said you're into magic. Could you maybe elaborate
Yes.
a little bit more on that kind of stuff?
Okay, for sure. So I prefer to use the word mysticism to describe magic in general because magic has a lot of stuff attached to it and can often be misidentified with like stage magic. So I prefer to just get away from that word completely. And mysticism, by its definition, would be referring to things like dream interpretation, seeking visions, scrying, divination, and those are all part of my practice. But when I use the word mysticism, I'm referring to a little bit more than just the umbrella for what mysticism is. I would also include practices like Reiki healing and trauma resolution, um, conflict resolution, psychoanalysis. Let's see what else. Ritual in general, just performing ritual with the intent to create psychological shifts for yourself. All of that I would put underneath the term of mysticism, and all of that is what my practice incorporates.
So, would you call yourself a mystic then?
I would certainly identify myself as a mystic. Before I would use the label of magician or witch or whatever, I would prefer to use the label mystic.
Now, you said you perform services. Can you maybe tell us about what you do, how people get in touch with you, how
Okay.
that process works?
For sure. So anyone who is interested in services can just reach out to me through my Facebook page. The link I think is shared there at the bottom of the screen. Um, so my most popular service is scrying, where people they want divination. Like people are always looking for tarot readings on the internet. So the scrying service that I offer is the closest thing to a tarot reading that I provide publicly. I do little tarot readings every now and then, but scrying is when I use a bowl of water or a crystal ball or just a reflective surface to seek vision. So I will sit and I will meditate for a bit and gaze into the surface, the reflective surface, and after some time it starts to morph and show me images and visions. And then I interpret these visions the same way I would interpret a dream. So that is my most popular service, where people will request divination. They will ask me questions, things that they're struggling with. They want answers. Sometimes they will ask me about, like, what's that person thinking? Or they'll ask me about specific future outcomes. And I'll be like, no, I'm not going to ask that question. That's not going to provide you with any kind of value. Ask me something like, how can I tap into the true reaches of my potential? Ask me something like, how can I overcome this problem of procrastination? Ask me something like, how can I recognize and identify what is true masculinity versus true femininity? Those are the kinds of questions that I'm going to get valuable answers from the scrying waters when I seek visions. Another popular service that I provide is ritual crafting, antimonial ritual crafting. So antimonianism, let me say it again, antimonianism, it is a practice where you deliberately challenge laws. So that doesn't have to be social laws, that can be like religious laws. The practice comes from me out of challenging things that were taught to me by the church, things that have not been serving me and that have held me back in my life. So then the antimonianism is ritual that is geared towards breaking those conditions, specifically the ones that don't serve me. So ritual is symbolic. You're doing little symbolic actions to represent changes that you want to see take effect in your life and the world around you. Yeah, this just like gears your psychology into it. It allows you to start moving towards it unconsciously. You don't have to like make a specific focused effort towards your outcome anymore. You can allow it to just manifest. So then designing rituals with the appropriate symbols for people, because at its core, my mystic practice, I guess, is a science of symbolism. So yeah, designing rituals, symbolic rituals that other people can perform or that I do alongside them. I take little videos, images. Some people are prepared to do ritual themselves. That is very potent, accomplishes like immediate results. Some people are not so prepared to do things themselves. And then I will do the ritual and I will share it with them so that it still affects their psychology. I will share media with them. And even if they do it themselves, I will still do it alongside them, offer them support, and I will still share the media with them so they feel like I still did something. I still showed up to do some work for them. And yeah.
Is that
the practice of Reiki? Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
no, you
No,
speak
no, no.
and then I'll go on again.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Another service that I provide is Reiki healing, which is a little bit different to these other two that I have described are science of symbols. It's very much in like the mind space, but Reiki is about the emotional self, and it gets really tied up in pseudosciences where you're like summoning energy and channeling it through your hands and pouring it into somebody else. So what this practice looks like to me is taking some time to relive my most intense memories that revolve around love. So like moments where I know without a doubt that I am loved or that I'm experiencing love for someone else. Memories where I'm feeling compassion, feeling hope, just tapping into all of those emotions, trying to build them up, summoning, conjuring them, and then directing them and sharing them with other people. Through gestures, I like to use gestures because I feel like that actually communicates something. I like to use sound because I feel like that actually communicates something. And because I can use gesture and sound, I don't feel like location is important. This means I can perform these Reiki healing ceremonies, Reiki healing sessions remotely. It doesn't have to be done in person. I would call this Reiki practice experimental at this point because I haven't had a lot of feedback from my clients. My clients often, they receive their Reiki and then they like, it's done. They don't speak to me again for months. So yeah, I've had some feedback from people saying that they feel like a lot of energy. Some saying they get like ringing in the ears. I've had other people come back and say like their whole like life has changed completely as a result of that Reiki healing session. Their relationships have become healthier. Yeah, I guess that's the meat of my practices.
Desiree's asking how long have you been practicing this mystic arts?
So I started practicing professionally in 2018. So 2018 to 2023 is 5 years.
And you said you're 25 now?
That's right.
So since about 20 years old. Matt's asking, he said, thanks for the interview, you too, Qarin. Do you follow John Dee or implement the key of Solomon in your mystic practices?
I am familiar with John Dee. Not as familiar as some other scholars and some other mystics, magicians, Thelemites, and whatnot. The Lesser Key of Solomon, I have made use of it once or twice, explored it, connected with specific spirits that I worked with in the Lesser Key. So for those who don't know, the Lesser Key of Solomon is about working with demons. It's about working with the typical demons of Christian mythology. The mythology is that Solomon enslaved these demons during his reign. He captured them and bound them to certain symbols. And you can then interact with them and form relationships with them and do favors for one another by utilizing these symbols. So I have used the symbols of Bune and Zephyr specifically, and I have brought them offerings. Their offerings, there's lists of offerings in the Lesser Key of what you can bring to them, made requests, particularly what I was asking from them at that time was assistance with smooth legal matters because I was going through divorce and I wasn't happy with some of the conditions that my ex-wife had written in the divorce notice, whatever. And so the judge threw it out. And then we reopened a new case. And so this time I went and I consulted with Bune and Zephyr to have smoother resolution, to get an outcome with this divorce case that actually suits me and my daughter and my ex-wife, suits us all fairly. And it worked out, you know. It didn't happen in the way I expected. What happened is that my ex-wife changed her mind. She no longer placed any conditions in the divorce notice. She literally just filed for divorce. And yeah, when we were in the court, the judge just looked at it, agreed that we can be divorced, and that was that. Everything else we sort out verbally and civilly. We just discuss it and come to some kind of agreement. We don't have to involve the law. So I'd say that ritual and those petitions were very successful.
So you said you contacted Zune and Zephyr?
Bune, B-U-N-E, and Zephyr, Z-E-P-H-A-R.
And those are demons?
Those are demons according to Christian, well, those names are not anywhere in the Bible, but they are associated with the Abrahamic Christian religion.
And so with your experience then, like, do they scare you? Do they come off as, very powerful? Like, what's your thoughts
So
on, your communication with them?
my take on it all is that John Dee and those who were creating the Lesser Key of Solomon were doing their absolute best to be as edgy as they possibly could, to make it as exciting and as nervous as possible for the reader or the practitioner. And as one who's been practicing mysticism for these years, like I understand that emotions and your emotional experience is like the electricity that powers your magic. So being able to tap into all kinds of potent emotions is like a very important part of successful magic. And I feel like that is literally what the goal was, what John Dee's goal was to create these archetypes, these archetype spirits that would invoke nervousness, fear, the excitement of approaching the taboo, to get all of that emotional energy flowing for the caster.
Wow. Matt says, thanks for answering my questions. Boone and Zephyr, are they part of the 72 names of the Tetragrammaton?
No, those names are not in the. They are not in the tree of life or the tetragrammaton. No,
You mentioned
perhaps
that.
Bunes.
Okay, you mentioned that the John Dee tried to bring fear into the consciousness, and that, as we find, is the opposite of love, and that kind of takes people away from their true power. And so, where do you think that this power comes from if they're away from the true power of love?
I think that power, by its definition, is beyond love, beyond fear. Like the emotion itself is the power. So love is an emotion, fear is an emotion. There's all these different emotions that are positive and negative, that are pleasant for us to experience. Let's not say positive and negative. Let's say pleasant for us to experience or unpleasant for us to experience. But they are still power. It's like we get electricity that comes out of our power sockets that is 220-volt power that's generated by a spinning magnet inside a coil of copper wire, or we get energy that comes out of the sun off of solar panels, or we get energy that comes out of a battery, which is chemical reactions. All of these have different frequencies, they have different intensities of current, different voltage levels that define them. It's the same with our emotions. They're all power, they're all energy. They just have different configurations.
Desiree from our YouTube channel is asking, what is the purpose of the work with these demons, and how do you stay protected from them?
So the word demon comes from the background. Well, it comes from the Greek word daemon, which is for spirit. So I feel like that's really what we should be referring to, these entities that come from the lesser key. I don't think that we should refer to them as demons or consider them to be evil. I think that they are just like any other spirit. And like me, I'm a spirit. If you cross me, I'm going to get angry and I might hurt you. And it's the same for you guys. If I do something that is spiteful, you're going to get angry with me. You might do something spiteful back. It's the same when you work with spirits, whether they are angels or demons or whatever. If you are respectful, they will be respectful.
So do you think that there's a difference between happy, positive spirits opposed to dark, negative spirits that are, tormenting, and like, because people have different experiences with different entities onto the other side. Some are very happy, and then some are very unpleasant, where they get terrified, they get traumatized, they get
Yeah.
doors banging, stuff flying off the walls, and like, really freaking people out. And I'm just trying to comprehend kind of what the difference is, if they're all the same spirits, but they have the ability like us to heal or to harm. They can come at you in a positive place, or there's some that are in a happy place, and some are in a negative place, and you just have to,
Mm.
discern which ones.
So this makes me think of fear. You were talking about fear earlier. It makes me think of trauma and how like fear can completely dominate a person's character, especially if they have been traumatized and the fear stems from that trauma. Um, so I feel like energy is alive and it's conscious. So if the energy is of a fear current, that fear is alive and conscious. So in our energy body, we have different energy centers. We have a fundamental energy center that connects us to a physical body, that keeps us in this physical plane. We have the creative energy center, which is to do with our ability to bring new life into this world through sexual procreation, through creative action and expression. We have a radiant energy center, which is to do with our personal will and our personal power, and so on and so forth. We have these various different energy centers. When we have experiences, they are like within the domains of one specific energy center. For example, sexual abuse would result in trauma in the creative energy center. And then things like doubt, self-doubt, and shame, those are energies, emotions, they start to breed in abundance here until they completely consume that person, and they are not able to access their sexuality or their creativity whatsoever anymore. It's completely infected by fear and shame and self-doubt. So, as I said earlier, energy is conscious. So this infectious entity that is comprised of literal shame and fear and doubt is alive, and it's tormenting that person. Enough said, I think.
So they manifest
It
their
could
own
get to a
torment?
point. Say again?
So they manifest their own torment?
Oh, I don't know if I would say they're manifesting it themselves, because the trauma comes from the environment. The trauma comes from an experience they've had from other or from unforeseen events.
Right, but if that trauma is, happened, say, when they were younger or, past, wasn't, recent, but they still have the trauma that's inside, and then they have these experiences that, are kind of bringing out that trauma, it's almost like they could be manifesting this stuff themselves, because if they resolve that trauma, what they had, and they know it no longer had a hold of them, then it would be less likely for them to manifest these situations that are dark, that are fearful. It just, well, just throwing some stuff out there.
Agreed. And that is part of my practice. My Reiki healing and the ritual services that I offer is geared towards identifying and targeting the infections that happen in people's traumatic memories. So I can't resolve somebody's trauma, and someone else can't really resolve their own trauma either. But we do heal naturally. Like if I cut myself, if I get hurt, I have an accident, I heal naturally. But if bacteria gets into that wound, that prevents the healing. So trauma is the same. It's like our energy body has been wounded. Now fear has gotten in there, and it's breeding, and it's preventing the healing from taking place. So the Reiki healing and ceremonial antimony in this case would be towards attacking that fear. It would be towards confronting that fear, resolving the doubt, countering it, so that the infection can be purged, allowing the natural process of healing to resume.
Matt is asking, has any of these entities attempted to take advantage of you? Don't forget to banish these entities when you're done and send them to source, and you protect yourself if you've ingrained these entities into your subconscious. So have you ever had any, dark experiences where, you
Yeah,
yourself have been afraid, that
yeah,
something, the situation, maybe you could talk a little bit about that?
yeah, for sure. With the very first ceremony that I did to provide this kind of healing, um, I felt all of those frequencies that I was addressing, like take hold of me and try to overwhelm me. I felt overwhelming fear and overwhelming hatred that was completely irrational. It didn't seem to have any target or any cause, because I wasn't the one who had experienced the trauma. It was my client who had experienced the trauma. But I extracted these energies anyway, and I bound them inside a little fruit shell. It was a squash that I took all the seeds out, and I did a little. It's all symbolic action, but symbolically binding those energies inside the fruit shell. Now, a strange kind of black goo started to grow inside of this fruit shell, and it grew in like a spiral motion until it reached the entrance of the shell. And certain people who came into contact with that fetish, I'm going to call it a fetish, a mystical fetish. Certain people, certain friends of mine who came into contact with that fetish began to exhibit the same symptoms, the same physical symptoms of bruises on the body where you can't reach, scratches on the body where you can't reach, blackouts and waking up in the middle of the house, sleepwalking. These were symptoms that my client was experiencing. Certain people who interacted with that first fetish that I created started to exhibit the same symptoms, and I had to go and do the same ritual for them to recapture the energies, I guess, because they had gotten out.
So that very
So
first time. Oh, go ahead.
they were asking me, do I banish them and send them to source? Now I do, but the first time I wanted to keep it. I thought, hey, I could keep it, maybe play around with the energies, maybe use it as a weapon against people I don't like. Be like, oh, here, go and bother that person. But no, it's too dangerous. I destroy them and return them to source.
So your first time, you weren't probably ready. You were just kind of jumped in before you knew what you were getting into.
Well, there wasn't really anybody else to call on at that time. And I don't know, I'd say I was ready enough, though it didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped. We did get through it. Very valuable learning curve for me.
Yeah, I could say that it could be a little bit scary, I guess. Jilly Mack
Yeah,
says, "Why do you need a demon over angels or even God?"
we don't. We don't need a demon or an angel or a god at all.
Well, she's like, I think what she's asking is why, use these demons instead of, kind of, connecting with angels or connecting with God when you're looking, to connect on
Uh,
the other side.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I guess the answer is that Christianity was really oppressive for me. So I feel a lot of resentment towards those archetypes. I feel like if they exist, then like what the fuck are they doing with their feet up, you know? Um, and then also I don't typically resonate with everything that Jesus had to say, you know, like him saying you got to turn the other cheek when someone strikes you. No, if somebody hits you, fucking hit them back. Um, yeah, so that is the primary reason, and I don't resonate with those frequencies. I don't feel like I can connect to or sympathize or enjoy those energies of angels and God and Jesus. But then, you know, like some kind of archetype of a sexy lawyer woman demon, that's cool. Who smokes a cigarette, swears a little bit, very powerful, wealthy. That's the archetype of Zephyr, you know? Something I resonate with a bit more.
David was asking, you said that once you learned, you destroyed them and sent them back, and he just wants to know, how do you destroy them?
So I do a brief visualization exercise where I see the energies going down into the core of the earth and being burned up and transformed and coming back a different color. But I take it outside and I put it in the weather where it's going to be exposed to rain and hail and sunlight, where it will rot and decay. And I just affirm that as this thing decays, it is transforming. None of the, like, it's energy that's bound there, right? It's energy that's been contained, and energy gets transformed on a regular through, like, when we move our bodies, we're transforming energy. When something burns, energy is transforming, it's changing. So as this thing is rotting, it's transforming the energies that are contained within. It's like I use the word destroy, but fire destroys things, and that's also transformation. The energy is not going anywhere, it's just changing from being malignant into being natural earth spirit again.
Wow, sounds like some pretty intense work.
It can be, it really can.
What do you do to clear yourself, to cleanse yourself, to make sure you're in a place where, you won't have these entities take over you?
Okay, so earlier I was talking about the energy centers that we have in our being and how they correspond with things like the fundamental energy center. It's in its healthy function, it is productive, it is self-reliant, it trusts in self, it trusts in our capacity to house and secure and feed ourselves. Our creative energy center, it trusts in our sexuality and our desires, it trusts in our sensuality and our connections and relationships. It is expressive, it is creative, accepting of self and other. The radiant energy center, this one is driven, it is humble, it is graceful. Connective energy center, this one is compassionate, understanding, patient. Expressive, this one is honest. I think honest is the best one for that. discerning. And when they're all working together, that's liberation. So I've mapped out these character traits and many more onto a hexagram, because there's 6 energy centers that I just identified now. And so the frequencies, the healthy functioning frequencies of each energy center, I've mapped onto a hexagram. And then I've also corresponded that symbol with certain vocal keys. So I will sing those vocal keys and I will visualize that hexagram, and I will go through each of the points in order to bring those frequencies of healthy function into my energy centers, pushing out fear, pushing out doubt, and all those things that become infectious and dangerous. More than that, cold water therapy is the key. Like, if all else fails, cold water therapy will solve the problem.
So did you mean like go take a cold shower?
Cold shower is great, but I mean like going into being submerged entirely in cold water for like 20 minutes. The colder, the better, honestly.
How do you breathe underwater for 20 minutes?
No, you don't need to like cover your head. You can be up to chin.
Oh,
You can
like an
dunk
ice
your head
bath.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen people those cold water plunges, and the Wim Hof, he seems to be able to go and swim under this ice cold ice water.
Yeah. I've seen lots of videos of people who do it, and it's crazy. I can't climb in the ice water for longer than like 3 seconds before I'm dying.
Well, on the opposite side of the spectrum, I was in my very first sweat lodge that I went into. They dig a hole in the ground and then they put these rocks on fire, and then they stick
Uh-huh.
these rocks into this hole, and this covered, tent kind of thing that's covered in so many layers, like 20, 30 layers of cloth and all these kind of things. And then they pour water on the rocks. And the very first one that I went into, I thought my ears were going to melt. And I was literally having to suck cold air from the ground just to try to survive this. It was the hottest thing. Like if hell was real, it felt like it was hot like hell. Like it was quite an experience that I had. So that's on the opposite side of hot.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just as valuable. Although I haven't personally been to a sweat lodge. I'm familiar with them. And just for those who don't know, the sweat lodge, its ritual is meant to symbolize the womb. And going into the sweat lodge in that warm, moist, dark environment, it's meant to symbolize you being in the womb, in development and in formation. And when you come out, you're being birthed. You're a new being birthed. So it is totally normal. And it's part of the intention to make you feel like you're dying when you're in the sweat lodge.
That was my very first one, and they sat me beside the chief, and it was dark, and there was lots of people in this thing, so I couldn't leave, so I was literally stuck. But before we started the ceremony, we all smoked the peace pipe, and then the chief asked me to go to the house and get the silver bucket of water so we could have water for the thing. But after I smoked that peace pipe and I went outside of that sweat lodge, it was one of the most profound experiences that I ever had, because I now heard the trees breathing. I could feel all the bugs and the birds, and I could see them and hear them. The buzzing sounds. It was like I was connected
Amazing.
to our Mother Earth like I had never, ever been connected to before.
And like you mentioned smoking the peace pipe and how it opened up that experience for you. What a lot of us fail to realize is that every substance is a medicine, including tobacco and things that we demonize as evil and wrong. Even tobacco is a potent medicine when used in ceremony and used properly and safely and not abused.
Yeah, is that something that you hope to experience one day, as a sweat lodge?
For sure. But I'm not actively seeking it. I expect I'll be invited, or it'll happen when the time is right.
Have you ever tried DMT or ayahuasca?
I haven't done ayahuasca personally, but iboga and mescaline, yes.
I'm not sure what iboga is.
Iboga is also DMT psychoactive. It's on the stimulant side of things. It's the bark of a tree. It is extremely dangerous in high dosages, but in small dosages, it is used in ceremonies, specifically ceremonies geared towards breaking addiction, funny enough. It's a substance, it's a drug that is used to attack other addictions. And it is extremely effective, I have found. It worked wonders for me, although I didn't use it with that intention. I just found I didn't have, when you're an addict, you feel whether it's a coffee or whether it's cigarettes, there's like this absent feeling, this anxious absent feeling, you need to get something. And after the iboga ceremony, I didn't feel that like anxious need to fulfill something inside anymore.
Yeah, I think I remember now. I have a wealthy friend who his mom took him to some iboga ceremony or whatever to
Okay.
help him through his serious, drug addiction that he had been battling ever since his sister died on a skateboard in front of him. That they were skateboarding down a hill, and he had not been able to deal with that trauma, so he delved into
Mm.
the serious drugs and gone. Have you have battled alcohol and drug addiction yourself then?
Yeah, alcohol addiction, not so much, but other substances. Um, Exploring and using substances, natural and otherwise, has been part of my practice of antinomianism, of challenging laws and conditions. Um, Having strict boundaries with myself has been really important. So, like when approaching a new substance, to have like clear, a very clear written contract on what my relationship is going to be with this, like how frequent, what dosages, and how frequent those dosages are going to be for what period of time. And it is so important that I stay within the boundaries of that agreement. But there have been times where I have not been able to, where I've not had the willpower to stay within the boundaries of my agreement. And then I've struggled with addiction to that specific substance. And in that case, I'm referring to methamphetamines. Um, Breaking through that addiction was done with cold water therapy, by the way. Um, yeah, isolating myself and extended exposure to like very cold water, 0 degrees. Um, yeah.
So like anytime you felt like you needed some, you would go jump in an ice bath or something like, or,
Exactly.
is that kind
And
of,
there was a certain point where I felt that I needed it constantly. Like I felt that the craving or the need was constant, and it's absolutely excruciating. It's not like that nagging feeling you get for cigarettes when it comes to a potent substance like meth or coke. When you don't have it there, it is so painful. Like that craving makes it so painful. Um, But what I was doing was actually laying in the river here. It's called the Homtini River. It's about half a kilometer to a kilometer hike from here. Um, yeah, just straight down the ravine. I just hiked down there and stayed there for a couple of days. Uh,
that's amazing. That was your own little way to heal yourself.
yeah. Well, I can't claim that I healed myself with that experience. The water called me there. I had no idea what I was doing, and the water healed me. The spirit of this river gave me healing.
Have you had, lots of trauma as a child? Like, is there things, because I know a lot of people that go through alcohol or drug addiction, tend to have traumatic things in their lives, because you can take 10 people that, injure themselves and go to the hospital and get on some kind of painkillers, and 8 or even 9 out of 10 can easily just get off them. But there's that 1 or 2 out of every 10 that have had severe trauma in their life that get on the painkillers, and they feel like they forget about some of those unresolved issues or feelings or thoughts that are running
Yeah.
through their head. So they tend to get addicted to these drugs because it's easier to be on them than to think about some of the trauma that they've gone through throughout their life.
Precisely. When on stimulants, particularly when on a strong stimulant, emotions of like pain of loss and pain of grief becomes very manageable and very minimal. while on the substance. It really helps distract and drown out the other voices in your head. But yes, there is trauma in my childhood. There is quite a bit of trauma. So yes, there is also addiction in my family, addiction from my mother's side of the family, specifically the harder addictions from my mother's side of the family, her herself and her brother, particularly her and her brother, and family, like it's just in the family. And there was physical abuse from my father's side during my upbringing, like not consistently and not all the time, but there was physical abuse. Sometimes it was quite severe. When I was about 7 years old, there was a farm attack here on my parents' land. So that was also a traumatic event, a core trauma. Nobody died, nobody was injured, but it happened, and it's still a traumatic event.
What does a farm attack
Before
mean?
that, when I was like a couple years before that, I was sexually molested by my taxi driver who would take me to school every day. So there's like various different traumas that have happened throughout my childhood and that have happened in my adulthood. I don't know how much of that is responsible for my choices or the outcome of addiction, honestly.
What's a farm attack?
So farm attack, it's something which has become a pandemic in Africa, specifically South Africa, where groups of people will go and attack a farm and will kill the owners of the farm for whatever reason. I don't know. It's a hate crime. It's a racially motivated crime most of the time. Yeah, it is what it is. It's where a group of people target and attack a privately owned farm.
Wowzers. And so did you have to go run and hide? Like, did you think that something was going to happen to you? Like, was it pretty scary for yourself going through that?
It was pretty scary. I was hiding, yes, and I was trying to, like my dad was confronting these people directly. The police came, but they hid in their vehicle. They didn't want anything to do with this. The local farm watch showed up, and they are the ones who really prevented any violence from happening. So yeah, I was hiding, and really what I wanted to do the whole time that I was hiding was come out and like support my dad and see him and know if he was safe and okay. But my mum wouldn't let me be seen. She wouldn't let me come out. She was like, "No, we're staying hidden." Yeah, it's an interesting memory, like to go back and relive it now. In hindsight, I see how that experience has affected my relationship to people of color. And I see how it has affected my relationship to specific individuals in this area. But if I go back to that memory, I don't feel so scared in that moment, actually. Like the trauma and the effects of the trauma seems to be on an unconscious level.
So are you maybe a little bit more hesitant of someone with color because of, that traumatic moment when you were
I
younger?
wouldn't go ahead and say that I'm more hesitant or reluctant to trust. What I'm implying is that I feel a visceral trauma response when I hear their voices or their accents or their language. Yeah, basically. But now I must mention that I might have double booked myself because I have a phone call to make at 8 o'clock precisely. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through at 8 o'clock. So I don't know how long we plan to do the interview, but I just like to make that call when we get to 8. If it doesn't get answered, then I'll come back on the show. If it does get answered, then I'm going to have to be on the call.
Sure. We tend to go about 2 hours, so there's still another hour to go.
Okay.
But Matt is asking, how does Qarin feel about Thelma, and how about any of Alice Bailey or Helena Blavatsky's work?
What was that one? Alice Bailey. So I'm not familiar with Alice Bailey. I think Thelema was a really cool thing, a step in the right direction. Helena Blavatsky, I feel like she's really the core. She's the core of all of the magic that we have today. She is the core of what the Golden Dawn was built around. She is the influence that defined Aleister Crowley and his work. Helena Blavatsky, for those who don't know, she basically defined the terms left hand and right hand practices, separating things, separating like dark practices. And it's not, dark doesn't mean evil, dark just means hidden, things that humans have typically wanted to hide from each other, things that we've been typically ashamed to share with each other, like sex magic. And specifically, Helena Blavatsky categorized sex magic as left hand. But yeah, Helena Blavatsky and Thelema and all of this is very important steps in the evolution of mysticism and magic. They are not the end. And yeah, they're useful to explore, but they can also hold you back. So take what's useful, explore it for a little while. Let me say that. Like fully throw yourself into Thelema for a little while, fully throw yourself into whatever belief system you want, but for a little while. Learn what it wants to teach you. And when you feel called somewhere else, don't feel afraid to let go of whatever you've been believing because of Thelema or whatever that practice. Be ready to let it go.
Do you think for people that delve too deep into it and can't let it go and get immersed with it, they could take a dark turn in their evolution?
Typically, that's exactly what happens, because like an attachment, it's obsessive, and obsession doesn't breed healthy emotions. It breeds things like fear and panic. When I have an attachment or I'm expecting something to go a certain way, then if it doesn't go that way, I feel angry about it. I feel upset about it. Or if something is happening that I don't want to happen, again, I feel anger, afraid, whatever, and push it away. So yes, if we can't exercise non-attachment, this is something that is going to offend a lot of people. But any practice or any religion, any belief, if we remain attached to it, it will fester and it will become unhealthy.
What's your thoughts on Aleister Crowley then?
Aleister Crowley, as a man, I think that he had some mental health issues. I think he was probably BPD. Like I can't diagnose him, but that's what I get. That's like the vibe that I get from him. Borderline personality disorder, struggling to control his emotional outbursts. And this is what gave him his infamy. And this is what got him isolated from all of his circles. Intelligent, but not like some scary man or some divine archetype either. He was just a guy who had his own shit to deal with. And I guess the lifestyle he led brought him a lot of attention, so he's remembered for that. But now it's 8, so I'm gonna just step away for a moment and make that call and see what happens.
Sure, we'll just wait here for you. I'll talk to the audience, and
Thank you so much.
if you
Do
come
have
back,
names?
will you let me know if you're going to be on, or are you just not going to come back if you?
I will let you know for sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Cheers.
Matt says Hitler followed Blavatsky, who defined left and right hand. Hitler was part of Thule, a secret society that split into two groups: Black Sun with Hitler and White Sun with Rudolf Steiner. Was the White Sun with Rudolf Steiner of the light, or they was just another dark force, but masquerading as the light there, Matt? I love learning from all of you. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate all of the stars that you are able to share every single broadcast. It surely helps. Shan, for Aleister Crowley, he was evil. So some say. Demons. not isolated, ran in his own satanic circle, Lambda. Yeah, lots of information on Crowley being a part of, a dark portion of Freemasonry or the Illuminati, things from, what people have shared. I'll take my outhouse break. Okay, you go take a break there, Diane. I always thought Crowley sought stimulation over realization. Alistair, God's will versus free will. Truth be told, I don't know much about the black sun or white sun. Okay, that'd be interesting because it's fascinating how you said that they split up into the two groups: the black sun worship with Hitler, and now we're seeing the black sun worship with Ukraine and the Azov Brigade. They got the black sun on their badges, and they even played that on Canadian television. They showed, right, one of the soldiers with the black sun insignia on it on CBC News. So it'd be interesting if anybody knows about the black sun and white sun splitting up into two groups. That'd be interesting. Anybody can send me that type of information. That'd be great to learn a little bit more about that. I'm doing my art project while I'm listening. What kind of art project, Desiree? Van Huff, the yin and the yang. So I don't know if you all know my thoughts of the yin and the yang. I believe everything is yin. I believe the yang was created to justify shitty behavior. I believe a lot of these religious texts and scriptures and things that depict this dark evil was to justify people's own darkness or shitty behavior or wanting to control other people. So they created this dark illusion in order to justify that. So that's kind of what my thoughts are on the yin and the yang. Angeline, when I was seeing my counselor, I was told I may have had a silent form of BPD, torment in my head, not out loud, and struggle with disassociation. Free will, yang. I will dive more into learning about the two groups. I just don't want to say anything I don't know. Perfect. Thanks. That's honorable there, Matt. Ying is love. I heard this AM, so I had surgery this AM, so I'm sitting here watching to not feel the pain. Kimberly, we sending you some healing energy your way. Sending our love. What kind of surgery? How you feeling? Did everything turn out okay? I'll buy that. I'm putting cardboard backing on my paper scenes I make. I'm putting cardboard. So paper scenes. What kind of paper scenes? Like, do you draw them? Do you, I'm not sure. Just learning as well. Good to learn. I had oral surgery. Oh, dental surgery. So, like, did you have some tooth extracted or some crowns put on? I'm not sure if Qarin is going to be able to come back here with us. I saw him come to the phone and it looks like it's frozen now. So I'm not sure if kind of took it off the screen. So hi Jesse, Angel and friends. Hi Nesta. Oh, there it kind of came back there. An implant. Oh, you had a dental implant, like a tooth put in. So is that where they like put a screw in and then they screw the tooth? Like somehow they put a screw into they screw it in and then they screw a tooth on top of it. I've seen some of that and it's pretty fascinating stuff. I use paper cutouts I create with pretty colored paper to create nature and cityscape scenes. That's great. I know you're on our YouTube, but it'd be neat if you could somehow send us a picture of stuff that you do. It's neat to see people and the art that they create. It's good. We still got a whole bunch of people. Any other questions? Any questions for Qarin or for me that we could maybe discuss here? How is everybody doing out there? How is your own governments? How is your system? Are you guys growing your own food? Oh, right on.
Okay, I'm back. We
Okay,
weren't
it
able
worked
to
out.
get through.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, he's coming back. He's back. So
I'm back. I'm
some
back.
people, some people
Sorry
got
for
to go
having
on
to
a,
run away on you guys.
some people got to go on a washroom break, so they're happy about that. Sometimes in these long
Nice.
interviews, they say they wish we took some breaks, but I tend to use the washroom before I get on, so I don't have to, use unless
Yeah.
I had to one time where my stomach was going and I had to cut out, and I said, "Just talk," or maybe I just even left. But what's your
This is
kitty's name?
Jim, by the way. This is Jim.
Okay, is that a fireplace to your left there?
That is indeed. This is a wood burning stove where, if I want to save on gas, then I'll build a fire. Well, I build a fire when it's cold, and then I use it to cook to save on energy, to save gas.
So do you use it often then, or do you not
Pretty
use it as
often,
much as
especially
you
now that it's
like?
winter on this side of the world.
Okay.
It's not lit
Uh,
this evening, but yeah.
so like kind of like a daily thing to heat yourself up during the winter, you turn it on, gives you a little extra heat, and so you don't have to. Do you actually have like a furnace as well though?
No, this is the furnace. This is the only heating system in this house.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, are you in like a cabin? Are you on your own little acreage? Like what kind of property do you live?
So the property it's a 9 hectare farm, agricultural farm. There are pigs here. Um, there is a cow. There is chickens for laying eggs. There's chickens for meat as well. The farm belongs to my parents. They live on the property. I live on the property. This is my house. They have their house. There's another house on the property. People living in there are living in there illegally, squatting, but that's beside the point. Um, yeah, so we've been taking it off grid in these last 2 years. So yeah, these lights. This whole stream is solar powered. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so I use gas to cook on, gas to heat water, and power for lights and computers, basically.
So you're in where in Africa?
The Republic of South Africa. I'm on the southernmost coast of Africa.
Angeline, my girlfriend, she's got a question for you. What are some of the most interesting things you've dove into or experienced?
What are some of the most interesting things that I've delved into? Hmm. So I don't really know how to answer the question from that perspective, but if I look at it and say what has been the most valuable things that I've delved into, the most valuable thing for me has been Tantra. The most valuable practice, delving into tantric practices, has been the most valuable thing for me. Tantra, for those who don't know, is sex magic in essence. It is about working with sexual energy and sexual emotion as your energy for magic. And typically, this practice is not about manifestation or getting what you want. This practice of Tantra is typically about healing. It's about healing from trauma, specifically sexual trauma, reconnecting with your sexuality, discovering your sexual identity. For me, I delve into Tantra right after a sexual trauma, right after being sexually abused. And it was invaluable for me to rediscover sex. So otherwise, sex was a painful, unpleasant thing from that point until I started to practice Tantra again. Well, began to practice Tantra. What else? What else has been very valuable for me? Art, like music and visual art. It's very therapeutic practice, and it is a very mystic practice. It's mysticism and magic is really all about communicating through symbols, and music is the most amazing way to communicate. And art is all about communicating things with symbols. It's when setting an intention and then creating, it is as good as casting a spell. It's as good as doing ritual. Like setting an intention, this is what I'm creating with this song. This is what I'm creating with this art piece. It is just as potent as any spell or ritual would ever be. Possibly more so, because we spend a lot of time on creative masterpieces, whereas when it comes to a spell, we want to get it done.
Angeline asked the question, and that's my girlfriend, and she's had severe sexual trauma, abuse when she started off when she was in diapers all the way, throughout her upbringing. But she was going to say, when you mentioned that, she was going to ask you about tantra because of that. Actually, my tantra classes were transformational for her, especially learning her body's yes and no. She hated her body because of, all of the trauma and abuse that she had went through in her life. She never thought she would ever enjoy sex. And because of, just kind of the sheer hate because of all, because of her body is why all of this, harmful, hurtful trauma had happened to her, right? So, so she justifiably, had a problem with it, but she had to go through a lot of different healing modalities and to get to a place where that she no longer feels that way. So that's major transformational for a person to go through some of that stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's so valuable. It's such basic practices. It seems so natural, like we should all be doing this naturally, but we're not. We're not spending time with ourselves. We're not exploring our bodies or our sex organs, or getting to know who we are and what we like and don't like. We're not doing it. There's too much shame and stigma around sex in general.
After your abuse, did you hate yourself for your body? Did you think maybe it was your fault? Did you blame yourself, at the time?
So I felt a lot of shame because there were certain points during the experience where I felt sexual pleasure and arousal. So I felt a lot of shame about that, and feeling like I wasn't just, in feeling like I was hurt or that I wasn't raped because of that. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that came up through it. And yes, a lot of self-loathing. Um, it didn't seem connected. It was connected, but it didn't seem connected. I wasn't loathing myself because I felt like I had attracted this experience. I was loathing myself because I thought I looked so vile and I was so unworthy and so worthless because of that experience. That experience proved just how worthless I am to everyone. Um, and just desolate, just hopeless and desolate, alone. The biggest thing that I dealt with was alone, feeling alone and isolated from everybody, no matter how close they actually were, or whether it was an illusion in my mind that separated me or not. Dealing with feeling isolated and feeling alone, that was the hardest part.
Do you still feel some of those feelings, or were you able to transcend that and
I
come to a
still
better place?
feel some of those things. They come up and they bother me sometimes, and I still get triggers, specifically during a sexual interaction with someone. If there's something that reminds me about that experience, or yeah, then it will completely shut off my sexual energy. Like I'll lose my erection immediately. I will like feel very uncomfortable very suddenly. Um, if my partner is patient and with tantra, remembering tantra and like reconnecting with myself, I can get back into the feeling, get back into the moment, and essentially recover. That's a tough one. Like I've been in relationships with people who have sexual trauma, and that's a tough one when something triggers. Like it can be days, it can be weeks before they come out of it, um, and they feel okay to be sensual and expressive again. So yeah, I guess I'm just punting tantra right now, being like, that is the solution.
Do you feel that, two people that have had sexual trauma will have a lot harder time to get into a good place? Or do you think that that could be, in essence, a bonding place where people could help each other through, their own situations?
So what I've observed as one who has sexual trauma and being in relationships with other people who have sexual trauma is that we just end up hurting each other, because the one will get triggered and they will lose their sexual current. They will not be in the moment. They will dissociate, but they will not say anything. And so they will get hurt in that moment, re-traumatized, injured even physically, or vice versa. So if these traumas are not being approached and addressed openly by both partners, and that is Tantra, then it's a very bad thing. It's like they're just hurting each other endlessly.
So is Tantra then, opening yourself up to being vulnerable? And, is that kind of how, some of this stuff is addressed, or what exactly, how do you relate that to Tantra?
Um, it's very much, as you said, vulnerability is so important when it comes to sex in general. Like, sex is a very vulnerable thing, whether it's done alone or with a partner. So vulnerability is a very core part of tantric practice, and just as a byproduct of what Tantra is. So if we're going all the way back to its roots, which is in India, it's in Oriental traditions. Tantra is about connecting to the god Shiva and the goddess Shakti, who are like the yin and yang. Earlier, I overheard you guys were talking about yin and yang. So like, they are the masculine and the feminine that mirror each other. When they come together in their sexual union, that's what all of our existence is. That's what this planet, this universe, it's all Maya. It's all an illusion that is being cast by the intimacy between Shiva and Shakti. So Tantra is about emulating that, you yourself embodying Shiva, and then entering into lovemaking and connection with Shakti, or vice versa, embodying Shakti and entering into lovemaking or receiving lovemaking from Shiva, depending on whether you're embodying the feminine or the masculine. And it is entirely possible, and I would encourage it, for the feminine to step into the masculine, and for the masculine to step into the feminine from time to time. Balance and experience on both ends is very valuable. So if I have to modernize what I just said, I'm talking about connecting with the goddess and whatever, and Shiva. So Shiva represents focus and will and power. Shakti represents like existence, just being. They're equally powerful. Like, if you have to consider the sun, it is radiating energy constantly. It is directly doing something to put out energy into the universe. But then if you consider the sea, it is just existing. It is powerful and dangerous, and there's energy there. You can see it in its movement, but the ocean is not doing anything to get that energy or to exhibit that energy. It's just existing and flowing. So that is very good examples of masculine and femininity, the two poles. Learning to embody that, or learning what that looks like for you, what your static energy looks like versus your radiant energy, and embodying it. I feel like I've lost connection with why this is relevant to Tantra, but I guess it doesn't matter. I've shared what's important.
You mentioned Shiva, and Van Huff says Shiva's my cat's name, but one adjective you didn't describe Shiva as was the destroyer. And some people believe that that Shiva is the destructive kind of god or energy or entity that is powering some of these dark forces here on Earth. They have it outside of CERN. They have the Shiva outside of actual CERN and things. So they're using some of these entities, to maybe not do so much good here?
Well, I don't feel like we would have the authority to use these entities to do bad. They are what they are, like you describing Shiva. Like I was describing him as focus and as will and as power. You're describing him as destruction. So destruction is also not a bad thing. I destroy myself on the regular. I have to destroy myself. I have to destroy my limitations. I have to destroy beliefs that don't serve me. I have to destroy my ego. Um, I have to deconstruct my entire identity in order to rebuild it more secure and more healthy. So Shiva's aspect is the destroyer, but specifically Kali. I've not worked with Shiva's aspect as the destroyer. I've worked with Kali as the destroyer to destroy my own limitations, the things that hold me back and keep me from what I truly desire. So in that case, destruction is a very valuable and powerful thing. When electricity flows through a wire, it gets warm because of resistances. If the copper is impure, it'll get hotter. If it is a bad conductor, it'll get so hot that it burns up. And it's the resistances that are burning. The energy flows freely through a conductor. So the heat, the fire, the destruction, it's burning the things that are resisting the energy. It's not trying to do harm or damage things. It's trying to get to its destination, and it's pushing through whatever resistances it needs to as it goes.
That makes sense. I like how, you explain that destroyer part, because there are things, whether we've been programmed, whether it's the trauma, whether it's, whatever past life, attachments, there's things that, keep us out of balance that we may need to destroy at ourselves in order to rebirth ourselves, to become reborn again, into our new, powerful being. And then something else might come up that we need to address and destroy that part in order to become into our full self.
You're on the nose there, hundreds. Earlier I was talking about energy centers in our body. So in Indian tradition and in Oriental tradition, they would consider that the chakras. They would call that the chakras, and they have names like the Mulahadra and Svahistana and so on, Manipura. So Tantra, once you've engaged that sexual energy and creative energy are identical, then you're bringing it and focusing it on each of your energy centers, your chakras, as you go, moving that creative life force through your entire being, connecting all of yourself from the earth to the heavens, from the root to the crown, and making yourself a channel, a conductor for this energy. So then the things like fear and shame that we described earlier that block these energy centers, that infect these energy centers, are the resistances. And when engaging with Tantra, they will come up. And when, like if you've got sexual trauma and you're trying to be sexual with someone, you get triggered and things interrupt your sexual energy and you can't have fun. So Tantra, you are deliberately bringing your focus back to that same point again and again and again, even though it's like meeting a resistance, and you're pushing through it, you're burning through it, facing it. Destroying. I guess Shiva's aspect as the destroyer is so relevant here because first of all, he's trying to open you up as a channel, your focus, because as we said, Shiva is focus. So your will and your focus is trying to open you up as a channel, and simultaneously it's destroying the resistances as it goes along.
Do you, Diane asked this earlier, do you live inland or do you live by the coast in South Africa?
I live on the coast. I'm about a 40 minutes drive away from the beach, but I am on the coast.
Van Huff says, been to India. Pardon?
I was just affirming that I'm in the Western Cape, Eden.
Van Huff said, been to India 11 times. India is kind of close to you. Have you ever got a chance to go to India, maybe study some of the practices there?
No, I haven't had a chance to go to India. I mean, maybe I have had chances, but I've declined them. Like I haven't actively sought it or tried to manifest it or put energy towards it. I have been to the Dhammapataka Meditation Center here in South Africa, which is affiliated with the Dhammapataka practices in India. It's a Buddhist outreach program. And it's, yeah, they teach you Vipassana meditation technique there, nothing to do with chakras or magic or tantra.
What's your relationship like with your parents now?
My relationship with my mother has, like, distance has grown there over the years. Like when I was younger, I used to have a close friendship with my mom, but as in my adulthood, there's hardly any relationship with my mom. I've had a terrible relationship with my dad my entire life, but as an adult, it's better than it's ever been. It's healthier than it's ever been. We're like, especially recently in the last couple months, we've opened up new lines of communication that are like, communicating in general has been our biggest problem and our biggest challenge, me and my dad. So yeah, there's a shift happening there with communications lately, and it's a good thing. It's a fantastic thing.
That's great to hear. So then do you live in your own little cabin then, away from,
That's right.
they have their own separate place? So you got your own space with your own internet and all that, your own power, your own solar grid?
That's right. Yeah.
Right on. So is there like work on the farm that you have to do? Like, is there, chores that need to be done, feed the animals? Like, is there stuff that, are required of you being there?
Yes, I have the title of farm manager here. So there is staff who do all of those things you mentioned, but there are projects that I need to oversee. And so when the staff are here, I am working with them and overseeing and um, drawing out the plans for them and making sure that we are following the plans and correcting any mistakes that are happening along the way. Building infrastructure like fences for the pigs, new hooks, new enclosures for chickens, new fencing for pigs, that sort of thing.
Are you guys more of an organic farm, or do you guys use a lot of the pesticides and sprays that, other
100%
farms do?
organic. 100% organic. There's no factory farming happening here. There's no pesticides. Like I use companion planting. So we don't really have any production on crops yet, but planting for myself, we use the technique of companion planting things together, certain plants that attract pests, certain plants that repel pests. The ones that attract it are pest control, to bring the pests there, rather eat that plant rather than what we want for ourselves. Yeah, there are organic approaches to controlling pests.
How is it like there in South Africa for this last 3 years? Did they scare everybody there? Was it 50-50? Everybody wearing the breathing inhibitors, getting the demon juice? Or, did people were
Yeah,
more of,
it was exactly the same here as it was anywhere else, except that I don't know how the rest of the world responded, but like our people rebelled against the laws of isolation and wearing masks. Like people gathered in crowds in the streets in protest, going out after curfew in protest. Now, this didn't really this didn't end lockdown, but I think it may have I'm sure it had a profound impact on the decisions that our government made regarding lockdown and the severity of its laws. I have no doubt that the protests had a positive effect that benefited everybody.
now you mentioned how they were attacking, the farmers, some of the landowners in South Africa. So we've heard about that. We've heard some things worse than others. Some say that media's embellished it worse than it was. But you being there and you having a lighter complexion skin, and I imagine same with your parents. Did that? You said that happened when you were younger. That one time that it happened. In recent years, the last 3 or 5 years, Is that a concern for you and your family at all? Or do you have a
I
good...
don't I don't consider it a concern. Like I don't feel like it's going to happen again. Lightning seldom strikes the same place twice, but it is happening, and it is a valid and very serious concern for pretty much every landowner. And the stories you're hearing in the news, some of them are worse than others, but it is just as bad and possibly worse than what the media is portraying.
So is it just the people are, so poor and they're just lashing out at the wealthy landowners? Is that kind of where this stems from?
Like I don't wanna get too deep into it, but I really feel like it is politically motivated. Like there are certain political figures and certain political parties that have been encouraging that kind of violence. And our neighboring country, Zimbabwe, when it changed from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, when it went from colonial government to local government, the new government made it legal that the native Shona people can, by force, take the land back for themselves from whomever they want. And so they did. And sometimes they did this violently, and sometimes they did this diplomatically. But that's basically the example that the people of this country have to follow. They see that that worked there, that's what they did there. They're trying to replicate it here with or without the government's approval.
Wow. But do you think, like, if you are in good relations with all of your neighbors and the people around you kind of respect you and your family, is it less likely to happen to someone like that opposed to some really stern, landowners that maybe aren't so pleasant with the localers?
Yes, I think that that definitely would make a difference, but I don't feel like there is any. I don't think it's such a premeditated targeting that's happening. I think it's quite a random. It's a random thing where people who are not local to the area are hitting properties. Um, I don't think that the people who are committing the crimes are local. They're not. They're coming in from other places, and they stay. Once they've hit a farm, they stay. They establish residence there. They like start building structures, and sometimes, not always. And as soon as one structure goes up, then people start flooding in by the thousands. Um, what else was I going to say? Basically, I don't think that it is premeditated. I think it is quite randomly chosen. I don't think they're like scouting, oh, these people are nice, those people are naughty. I think it's quite a random process.
When you say that it was politically motivated and, somehow they're getting energy or maybe funding, like, then when we delve deep into the world and what's going on, even like the Freemason model is order out of chaos. It's like some of these plants, or they're doing things to cause this chaos in order to
Mm.
disrupt, especially into the farmers and the farming industry, because, if they control the food, then they can control the people. And I think that that's kind of now and why we've been seeing it, that maybe it has been coordinated attacks on certain places or certain farms, because they're trying to create this instability in order for them to come as the white shining light of saviors to save the day of the chaos that they've created.
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly. Um, and I think you have a valid point there. I think in that case, it could very well be strategic. But once again, like I don't think it's specifically to do with anybody's character, or if that person is friendly with the locals or with the people and that person is not. It would again then just be regarding what is most strategic for them. How much do they stand to gain out of that, attacking that specific property?
He said that people are attacking farms. Is that what I missed? Yeah. So we were
Yeah.
just talking about, in South Africa, we've been hearing a lot of landowners, especially of, the lighter skin color, have been being attacked by, a lot of the localers, and we're just trying to figure out, and he said sometimes they'll come and take the land and build a structure, and Susie said squatters, so they become a professional squatter and they just kind of take over the land because the landowners maybe not have the security or the capability to defend themselves from the amount of people that are attacking these farms.
Hmm. And I also just want to affirm that we're all pretty local, like whether we're fair skinned or dark skinned, like the people who have owned these farms have been owning them from generations. And yeah, we're all local.
We're all indigenous to the land, we all
Yeah.
we all are from it, and they're trying to divide us in every single way, not just the race, the color, the land, the class, the titles, the beliefs, the left, the right, the sex, all kinds of things that they're doing in order to divide us in every way possible, because the only thing that they're afraid of is a united front, united humanity. And that's what totally scares them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Do you
they only have power as long as we give it to them. So
and
they just need to make sure that we forget that and never remember it.
are your people kind of unified there, whether they're light skin or dark skin? You said you're all from there. Like, do you feel a sense of community
I
amongst,
feel a sense of community. There is a very strong sense of division in the community between the fair-skinned people, the landowners, and the local non-land owning people, squatters. Yeah, because not everybody who owns property here is white, and not everybody who is working on a farm is colored, but there is a distinctive divide in the communities. Like me and my family, we have a long-standing relationship with the people who squat on our farm. We have long-standing relationships with other people who used to squat on our farm and who don't anymore, and who squat on other farms now. It is our community. We are part of it, and yeah, we are part of them. They are part of us. But it's like there's two separate communities that are going on. There's the people who have bought land recently, who have recently come into the community, who have no connection to the people who have lived here for generations. And then there's the people who have, our family and certain other families, and there's a distinctive divide between them. Like I am part of the communities of landowners, and I'm part of the communities of the people who have lived here for generations, and I can see they're not mixing. Like I'm standing at a point where I can interact with this party or that party, but they are not prepared to interact with each other. Yes, the colored local people want to connect. They want to learn and grow and collaborate, but yeah, not the same reciprocation from the other side.
what about secret societies, Freemasons? Is there much of that there? Do you know much about them? Have you ever been asked to be a
Yes,
Mason or a Rosicrucian? Like, have you ever been, or are you one?
I'm not, but my grandfather is. Um, my grandfather is a Freemason. He is Grand Master, 33rd degree Mason of the Cape Town Grand Mason Lodge. Freemasonry in South Africa is a big deal. It's a pretty big deal, but not so much on other secret societies. I don't know anything about Freemasonry. My grandfather won't tell me because of his oaths of secrecy, and I'm not prepared to join because of these secrets. Like, sure, I'll join your society and play your games with you. We can do ceremonies and ritual together, whatever you guys do. But I want to know what it is that I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to say, yes, I'm going to do this thing with you that I don't even know what it is, you know?
How can you agree to something that may, compromise your moral, what's your morality, and then now you're stuck in something that you may not like doing. Especially we hear some of the kind of very harsh stories of stuff that comes out of these rituals or ceremonies or things that they do to children and things. So, be pretty foolish to join something without knowing what you were getting into before you decided to. I don't know if they do blood oaths, or I don't know what I heard, that they drink out of skulls or something, like some of this weird stuff that they do.
So I'll tell you some of the things that I do know about Freemasons. So they typically keep their remains of their grandmasters. So people who have been grandmasters, they remain, their bones stay in the temple, in the Freemason temple. So that's where the rumors of drinking out of skulls comes from. But most countries don't allow us to keep bones privately anymore. So in South Africa, all of the bones in the Mason temples have been replaced with replicas because they can't legally keep bones there anymore.
Wow. I
All of
didn't
them,
think that they
unless they're
followed
keeping it in
legality.
secret. What else do I know about them? One of their primary initiation rites is to be buried alive. That is how you are initiated into the order, basically. You start out as a protege, you get a master, you follow him around, he teaches you everything. You copy him, you go where he goes, you greet the way he greets. Basically, you learn everything about how the masonry works and what you guys do from your patron. So you have to be sponsored into the masonry. You can go and request to join, but somebody has to sponsor you. Someone has to say, okay, you come and be my protege. And then they bury you alive once you are initiated in and you're no longer being sponsored. You're only buried for a few minutes and then they dig you up again in a coffin. What else do I know about them? Oh, once you've been initiated, you have to have ongoing projects. You have to take up a project. Your project can be anything, but it has to benefit more than just yourself. It has to be philanthropic. So like, for instance, my grandfather's project was to build old age homes, low income housing projects, retirement projects. That's the kind of thing that my grandfather did. Those were his projects that he took up to represent Freemasonry in South Africa. So that's an important thing, to choose a project. This is about your own development, like wealth, and accumulating wealth and security is a big part of Freemasonry. So yeah, that's it. If you're not doing anything, nothing's going to manifest for you. So it's like a requirement that you are engaged in some kind of project.
So it sounds kind of like the biker gangs where they have a prospect, but in the biker gangs, I guess the prospect is
It's
learning
crime.
from them all, opposed to, you're saying each one has got kind of their own type of person that takes them under their wing, opposed to a whole gang
Yeah.
full of them.
I think what's a key difference here between the secret society, Freemasonry specifically, and gangsterism is like most gang prospects and most gang activities are revolving around crime and taking from society, whereas with Freemasonry, their projects and the things that they engage in is about giving back to society.
Fascinating. Someone asked, is his grandfather a kind and moral man? Does he have a good relationship with him?
Yes, 100%. My grandfather is like my pillar. He is my example of healthy, admirable masculinity. Strong, secure, dependable, tempered, generous, kind. He is an incredible man. And he's
Matt
not just
says,
like this with his family, he's like this on a wide scale.
with everyone.
Hmm.
Matt says building is the theme of Freemasonry.
What was that?
Building
is the theme
is
of
the theme of
Freemasonry. Yes.
Freemasonry. They want to build, they want to create. So that's kind of the theme. When you were mentioning
Yeah, it
about the
was
bone,
established by Masons. construction masons who were carving the cathedrals for the Catholic Church. Yeah, they felt like they were not being appreciated or properly paid, or they were being mistreated. So they formed a little secret society and were oppressed for that. The church was like, you guys don't have the right to meet in private, so you better be imprisoned for it.
Well, maybe the Freemasonry was, created to, kind of be away from the church and, the rules and things. But it seems
Exactly.
like with everything has been infiltrated. And it's all back to the churches put their hooks right back in and pulled the Freemasonry right back into its clutches. So maybe what started out as a good thing may not be, the case now. I don't know much about it, just from the research that I've done. I'm definitely not an expert at it, but, just from the stuff that I'm learning and talking with people, that, it is almost like a branch of
Yeah,
the evil empire.
there's always dangerous and frightful things in the dark, I think. So, secrecy, hidden, dark. There's always going to be scary, scary, frightening shit in the dark.
Matt, like I said, knows lots about the Freemasonry. He said in Anishinaabe, I think, Chiapia is a spirit and Chipalk is spirit essence. Bones keep the energy alive. That's why they would
That's
keep
very
their.
interesting insight. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, helping us understand why the practice of keeping the bones.
Okay. Are there Masons that practice vampirism? Do you know?
I wouldn't know because I'm not a Mason. So, I've never met anyone who practices vampirism and practices Freemasonry. Freemasonry isn't a practice. Freemasonry has many practices which are beneath its umbrella. Freemasonry is just a label, it's a statement. It's like saying I'm feminist, I like stand for women's rights. Freemasonry was like saying I am a Mason, I stand for Mason rights, equal rights, and um, unionizing the working class. Basically, that's how Freemasonry started.
So through interacts with realities. Okay, unseen realities. So you mentioned in your bio, through your creative process, I've learned to interact with realities unseen. And I'm here to share that gift. Share some of that knowledge here. What's these unseen realities? I know we've talked a little bit
Unseen
about
worlds,
entities, but maybe
unseen
tell us about
realities.
the worlds and the unseen realities that you've seen. How do you connect with them? Is it in dream state? Do you go into a meditative state? Do you walk to the desert and all of a sudden, you can't walk anymore and some sheik grabs you up, like, in John Wick? I'm not sure if you ever seen in that movie. It was just, I saw it the other day, so I just saw how
All of the
he
above. Yeah. So let me explore it for a moment. The unseen worlds, subtle. It communicates to us very subtly, very subtle things. Like mysticism is all about, as I originally opened with saying that the core of mysticism is it's a symbol of sciences. So let's assume that every single thing that we're perceiving is a symbol. Like this chair, I perceive it with my eyes and my hands, it's a symbol. I don't actually know what this thing is beyond my perception of it. I can only interact with the symbol of it. That symbol exists in my mind. So everything is a symbol, and all symbols can be interpreted. So this is how I tap into, how I tap into unseen worlds, the unseen realities. An ant, for example. I don't know if the ant is going to be the best example, but let's go with it. An ant, for example, I'm working on my computer, and there's an ant who comes and he climbs up the side of my keyboard, and he's carrying something that's like 8 times his size, and he's on a mission. He's got this thing, he's lugging it up the side of my keyboard, and he's like taking it across the keyboard. I'm looking at that and I see it. It's telling me about myself and my own process. It's showing me that what I'm doing here, this content creation process that I'm doing, I'm creating, writing on my keyboard, walking across my keyboard, walking across the realms of the mind and thought. And I'm carrying this purpose with me. I have an intention that I'm carrying, and it's like 100 times my weight. It's way bigger than I am, and I'm taking it up and down over landscapes that are like so alien. This is a reality that's not like physically visible, but it's something that I'm actively engaging and exploring. This symbol is telling me about that reality. Let me see if I can think of a better example that can maybe let me show you like a practical example. So back in the days when I was an addict, I go on a mission to get my drugs, and I'm terribly paranoid about it because the police know that I interact with the drug dealers regularly. They've followed me home in the past. So I'm fucking terrified and paranoid. Every time that I do this, I'm afraid that I'm being followed home by the police. This time I've got my fix and I'm leaving. I'm leaving town, I'm going home. And I see an eagle, and he's flying and he's soaring and he's just so free and liberated. And it's like, he's telling me that I am free. I'm soaring free. That is the oracle he's telling me. That's what his symbol is saying to me. I'm soaring free. On another occasion, like on the occasion where I was being followed by the police, he was hovering over one spot. Same eagle. He was hovering over one spot and then he dropped down, and I saw, oh, he saw something that he could eat and he swooped down to catch it. That was exactly what was happening. The police had seen me breaking the law, and now they were following me. They were stalking, and they were going to swoop down. Yes, so the oracle, the symbol of the environment, is telling me something about realities that can't be perceived with the eye. It's happening, it's present, it's right here, but it can't be perceived through sound or sight or smell or touch.
That makes sense. Have you gone to other dimensions?
Gone to other dimensions. Let me explore that word, dimension. I feel like if I'm touching something, that is one dimension of sense. If I'm seeing it, that's another dimension of sense. If I'm tasting it, it's another dimension of sense. So in essence, like we are like 5D beings, because we've got 5 dimensions of input, of sensory input.
Actually, 6.
So
we have
actually
our 5
6.
senses, but we have our 6th sense, and that's the one that seems to be forgotten, and the ones they don't want to teach us because they want us to be grounded in our 5 senses, opposed to knowing the 6th intuitive sense, our primordial state.
Okay. With the 6th sense, I feel like that is for me, that is a new perspective that opens up as a result of all of my other senses working together. So on a physical level, I've got these senses that can perceive smell and whatever, but let's imagine a paradigm where everything that you can smell is within its own dimension. Because there are certain people who can smell when there's a spirit around. Like I have that experience. Not always, but some spirits, or like there's some kind of change will happen in the psychology of people around me or in the atmosphere. And then I will smell something's burning, but nothing's actually burning. So I'm perceiving something that's happening on a 5th dimensional scale, or a 4th dimensional scale, whatever dimension we want to classify smell as. So if all of my senses are operating properly, then like a new reality opens up, new third eye vision opens up. I'm able to perceive all of these things that are not physically here. I'm picking up on it through my nose, I'm picking up on it through my ears, subtle cues, subtle sounds and vibrations. That's how I approach the idea of dimensions and the third eye. That's how I understand it. Having traveled to other dimensions, I feel like you're talking about that John Wick experience, or like dream world adventures. I had an experience like that where I did an invocation ceremony. An invocation is where you summon a god or a spirit. And then I passed out, and I had this wacky dream experience where that entity came, and we had a conversation. They told me some things. We sorted some stuff out, had a little bit of a fist fight, and then I woke up. Did I go to another reality, and did I go to another dimension, or did I just dream that? Same thing. Um, another invocation ceremony I did with Isis, the god of Egypt, goddess of Egypt. Called her in, asked her to take me on a journey into the underworld. Then I passed out, and I dreamed that I was in a boat underground with Anubis, the god of death. So yeah, we are shifting into alternative realities, but like it's mysticism. That's literally what mysticism is.
Do you sleep okay?
Yeah, I do.
In dreams, like you mentioned this one, but do you dream often? Do they come, are they good dreams, bad dreams, all kinds of dreams?
Like you said, all kinds of dreams. If I'm not remembering my dreams, it's because I'm not connected to them and I'm not seeking them. If I do remember my dreams, it's usually because I'm actively seeking them and making the intention to go on a dream journey and learn what it is that it needs to teach me. For people who are not remembering their dreams and who are struggling to tap into their dreams, to record them as soon as you wake up is the best way. It's the best way to develop a relationship with them. To set the intention, I'm going to remember my dreams, and then to sleep. And then when you wake up in the morning, to make a little voice note on your phone. The first thing you do, make a little voice note. Even if you're just saying, I don't remember anything, I don't think I dreamed. Even if you do just that, it's a step in the right direction towards unlocking your dream worlds. And then anytime that I stop recording my dreams or I stop setting the intention to dream, then I stop dreaming.
I think it's a really good practice for people to have a pen and paper beside them, and when they wake up in the AM, to write some stuff down, whether you write your dreams, whether you write what you want to do for the day, just write. And, I don't do that. I, hope to do that more. I've had my paper there and my pen already, and for some reason, I don't remember to do it, but I'd like to get into that practice. I think that would be beneficial for people just to wake up and just write. And then you can look back on, you do that every day for 6 months, and then 6 months ago you see your patterns, how it was opposed to how things are now for you.
Yeah. Being able to look back at your patterns is very important. Like looking back on it, one thing that's like half the journey, and the other half is learning from yourself to be able to acknowledge, yes, in that situation I sabotaged myself. In that situation, what I did there, that really worked out. If I can't acknowledge where I fell short, then I will repeat those mistakes. If I can't acknowledge where I succeeded, I won't be able to repeat that success. So, it's just something that came through for me. I thought I'd share it.
When you mentioned about smelling, the smoke, Trisha said, yes, yes, yes. I smell cannabis all the time because my sister used to smoke it. She has passed on. I feel her energy at times too. I've heard people that see things on the other side connect with people on the other side. Sometimes they're cigar smokers, so they'll smell cigar smoke and know that person or that entity is near. Just because of the different or perfume smells. Like I've heard lots of different stories about that kind of stuff happening.
Yeah, there's actually a word for it, but I don't remember what it is called. It's Claire something. But it applies like all of our senses. Sometimes I hear things, and people might call that auditory hallucination. Sometimes I see things. People might call that visual hallucination, and it is. That doesn't make it, doesn't mean it's not real. So I am actually schizophrenic. So I've been seeing visions my whole life, like diagnosable, clinically schizophrenic. So So where's the line between like mental health and spiritual gift or drug-induced psychosis? Like, where's the line, and what's real and what's not? Like, if I take the visions that I'm seeing, the hallucinations I'm getting, the sounds I'm hearing, or the smells that I'm smelling, if I take it literally, that's when I start to cause harm to myself and to others. That's when I start to get paranoid and get frantic. None of the things that I see, none of these hallucinations are to be taken literally. They are symbols that I need to interpret through mysticism. Like, I need to unpack that symbol, ask myself, what does this thing represent? Like, an ant it's a colony creature. It enjoys working as a hive mind. It is able to lift things that are 10 times its weight. It has its skeleton on the outside of its body. These are all very interesting points to take into consideration when unpacking the symbol of the ant. So whatever I'm seeing in my mind's eye, whatever hallucination is being shown to me, like I might see a demon sitting on someone's shoulder or whatever. One that really comes up for me is when I was younger, I would chat with people on instant messengers. We all did this, I guess, when it became popular, when instant messengers came out. And one day I was sitting and my phone was just next to me, and like this hand, this really scary looking demon hand came out of the phone and reached for me. And it was scary, but like hallucinations are not were not uncommon for me. It was traumatic and it scared me and it sent me into like a panic and made me paranoid. But in hindsight, looking back, I realized that that hand came through at the very same time that I got a friend request from a predator. So that vision, that hallucination, it was telling me something about the unseen world. It was telling me something. If I had interpreted it, instead of taking it as meaning a literal demon coming through my phone,
It's
yeah,
messages that they're communicating messages. And like my girlfriend sees a lot of things and energies and entities on the other side. Like I told you earlier, she had severe trauma from being abused from a very, very young age. So she would have to check herself out of her body in order to protect herself from what was going on. So when people gain those skills to protect themselves, to see these other fairies and in these other worlds, then they see it, they become a part of it. And then some people, when they try to communicate these things with other people, no, you're just crazy, no, you're at schizophrenia, no, you need to get on some drugs, that's not normal. But it is normal, because there is entities, there is things on the other side, source, energy angels, trying to help us and communicate with us, and just kind of guide us along the way. But we've been taught and programmed that no, you're not seeing, that's not, your imaginary friend's not real, that entity
yeah,
is not real. And so when you're programmed to believe it's not real, you're stuck, especially as a child. Well, I see it, I feel it, I smell it, I can maybe even touch it, like you said, or even taste, but you're trying to tell me it's not real. And hence, that's where the crazy comes in. That's where the schizophrenia comes in. That's where just drug them, and they'll forget about seeing any of these energies or entities. And that's kind of the barrier of a world that we've been put into, where they say
yeah,
believe in God, but if you have these experiences, no, that's not, those are demons, those are, and so it's a really confused world that we've been brought into.
Well, as one who has been dealing with mental health and one who is a mystic, I've had to interact with a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists. So, from the medical perspective, they're not so worried about you seeing things. They're not so worried about like hallucinations or auditory, visual, or whatever it is. They're not so concerned about that. It's when it becomes self-destructive, like with schizophrenia, particularly. When the things that you are perceiving are sending you into shock, into psychic shock, psychological shock, where you like freeze and you don't move for hours on end, then they need to intervene chemically. Or if it's sending you into a paranoid psychosis and you start stalking people and breaking into people's houses because you believe, like, without a doubt, that they are a demon or whatever your paranoia is, when it starts to become self-destructive and destructive to other, that's when they classify it and medicate it.
Did they have you on medication, and at what age did they start you on medication? They did put you on medication throughout your life.
So I went undiagnosed, and I'm still undiagnosed, but I only went to go and be diagnosed recently. Once they came back to me and said, this is what we're going to diagnose you with, then I said, like, I don't actually want that label. I don't want that medical label. But yes, I was treated with antipsychotics. I was treated with, it is basically a sedative, a mild sedative. It is meant to target and regulate your like serotonin release, because what is happening for someone that is schizophrenic, that is sending them into psychosis, is that like they interact with something that triggers them, and it causes a flood of serotonin into their brains. So we already have this like very thin line between the inner world and the outer world. Now there's like this manic explosion of serotonin and excitement, and that's what pushes us over the edge into psychosis. So the antipsychotic is to regulate that, to prevent that from happening, so that if you encounter a trigger, it's not going to send you into a psychotic episode. I found the side effect of the antipsychotics was that I lost all of my creativity. I would sit with a page in front of me and not put a single mark on it for hours. 12 hours, I'd just sit there staring at a blank page. I would try and make music, and then I would listen to what I've created, and there's no coherence, there's no sound pattern in what I've just created. And I get so frustrated with myself. What is wrong with me? Why can't I make a sound that is intelligent? That is why I rejected the pharmaceutical medication. But for a time, I was on the antipsychotics. I'm also bipolar, so at the same time, I was also on lithium to treat bipolar. But now I'm not on any pharmaceuticals.
Good for
the only
you.
substance that I use is cannabis, and I use it very sparingly and very rarely, because cannabis it can trigger me. It can trigger me to go into paranoia. So using it very sparingly, or let me put it this way, it makes me more vulnerable to be triggered into paranoia.
Now, when you are on these antipsychotics, one of the big side effects they say is suicide. The people tend to want to harm themselves or others. Did you get that at all when you were on these drugs?
No, definitely not.
Well, yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard of that. I didn't feel very present. I felt like I was always half asleep, like I could never fully wake up. And the pills did make me drowsy, so I had to take them. I had to take a half of one in the morning and half of one in the evening. Over time, you get used to it, and it doesn't make you feel so drowsy anymore. But like at first, it would knock me out. I'd have to go and like sleep and nap.
Well, I think it's like cannabis in a way that you build up tolerance, right? At the beginning, it's really powerful. And as you are taking it, you build tolerance up to it. Same thing with cannabis. I know people are afraid because they get paranoid because they take too much. It's because their body's not used to it. So if I don't consume it for a week and then I smoke what I normally smoke, I am like I'm on another level. But if I smoke that much after smoking every day for months or weeks or months or years, then you don't have that same effects because you build tolerance. But if I stop again for a month and then you take just a little bit, the problem with most people that consume cannabis, they take too much.
It has a different effect on my psychology because of my schizophrenia. Because I'm neurodivergent, it affects me differently. If I smoke, paranoia is not that's not a side effect that I get immediately. I'll smoke now, there'll be no problem. It's only if I'm consistently using it, like you said, smoking every day, building a tolerance. The longer that I'm on it, the more vulnerable I become to being triggered into paranoia. So like, I know for most people, smoking cannabis can bring about paranoia, but for one who is schizophrenic, it gets triggered. It gets triggered by something that's intense. Like what triggered it for me most recently was somebody shining a torch through my window while I was sleeping. Like I've got a curtain, but still somebody like scouting my house from outside. That was the most recent thing that triggered me to go into paranoia. And I don't notice it immediately. I just find like over the next few days, I'm walking around the house more times, or I'm doing little things that indicate this paranoia is growing. And if I am consuming cannabis regularly, I'm very much more likely to be triggered to go into that kind of paranoid episode. If I'm giving it space in between. So here's let me put it this way: if I'm smoking once a day, it's not very likely that I will be triggered, and it's not very likely that paranoia will overwhelm me or send me into a psychosis. Not very likely. Possible. If it's more than once a day and it's consistent, it's almost certain. It's just a matter of time.
I found what works best for me is that I wait until after dinner, have my dinner, and then before I settle in, then I'll have one, two tops, but usually it's just one. When I go visit friends, they like smoking one every 15 minutes, and it's like crazy because I don't consume it that way myself. And I'm more not with a lot of people that like to consume it or whatever, right? By myself, or say with my girlfriend who doesn't very often. But like I don't like to be high all day long, every day, all day. And, I think that that's kind of taking yourself out of reality. So I find what works best for me, and I don't do it every day, but it's when I do, I usually do it after dinner time when I'm nice, relaxed, have some. And, but the only problem is I get my late night munchies. So after, if I, consume it, I say 8 p.m., by like midnight, I ate dinner at 5 or 6. It's midnight. It's been 6 hours. I'm coming down, and now I'm hungry and I get the munchies. So that's one thing that I'm battling with myself.
I see. Yeah, I also typically will only smoke it in the afternoons, usually before dinner. Like in the evening, once I've completed whatever needs to be done and the staff has all been taken home and it's time to relax and take my shoes off, that's when I'll smoke.
Nice.
If I smoke.
Desiree here, she says, this is no coincidence that I caught this show. I'm dealing with my mama being off her Xanax, but she want to stop taking it, but I'm a bit worried. What do you recommend I do? Would you like to
I
answer
think
that?
that you should support her. If she wants to give up that substance for whatever reason she's been on it, and whatever her reasons are for letting it go, I think you should support her. And I think just look into like holistic ways to cope with withdrawal symptoms. Like for me personally, cold water therapy is the key, but the heat therapy like sweat lodging and saunas, that it has also been effective for some people. Plant medicine ceremonies with psilocybin and with iboga have also proven to be effective against addiction and coping with withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, some people, they'll do microdosing of the psilocybin, like he said, just very small doses keeps them glowing. But my advice to you, Desiree, is that find out what plant Xanax is made off of. Most of their pharmaceutical drugs are made off of a natural substance or a plant. And then what they do is they make a synthetic copy because they're not allowed to patent the plant. So they make a synthetic copy of what that plant is, and then that's what they give to the people. So if she's having some withdrawal symptoms, find what these natural plants are and maybe have her take some of the natural substances and slowly wean her off the natural, because sometimes taking people off some of these pharmaceuticals are just as detrimental as them being on the pharmaceuticals. If you take yourself off it too quick, something sometimes with some people and some of the drugs have everlasting effects that are, kind of detrimental, like I said, or even worse. So that's, you have to be really careful. They've really constructed these pharmaceutical drugs. It's like they're sorcery. It's black magic sorcery. And, if you're not doing it the right way, then, you could, have unwelcome results.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, there's always a natural plant or substance or whatever, right? And that's what I like to
Yeah,
tell people is take the natural and then slowly wean yourself off the natural. But
yeah,
it's great to
all the drugs are made up of compounds and elements, and all of those elements and compounds exist in nature to begin with.
so we're coming up on our time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Is there anything
Yeah, it's
maybe
been
that we didn't?
fantastic getting to meet you and your audience. Thank you for having me here on your show.
You're very welcome. Thanks to Bradley for linking this up for us. Is there anything that maybe we didn't talk about here today that you wanted to share before we end this?
No. No, the only things that I felt was really important to discuss was the Tantra, the ritual antinomianism, and we discussed all of those things. So
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. May the source be with you. Thank you, everybody, for all your likes, comments, heart shares, and stars. We appreciate all of your love and support in any way that you're able to share it. We do have another missing link today with Donald Ledesima and Terry Lynch. They are filmmakers that make movies about people that are having experiences with extraterrestrials. So I watched their trailer. I believe the trailer is up on the missing link, page on Facebook. If you wanted to check that out, we don't have any promotions on any of the other platforms. Thank you for everybody that's watching on, our Facebook, our LinkedIn, our YouTube, our Twitch, our Twitter, and our Rumble. We're just trying to, enlighten as many people as we can in as many different places. Yeah, wean off. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Adios, amigos. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you. May the source be with you all. So thanks again, Qarin. Take care of yourself. Sounds like you're doing all right, and just keep on keeping on. So I love y'all. We'll see you next time we see you. I'm your host, Jesse Howell. Please leave your comments on what you thought about this interview, and we'll see you next time we see you. Bye, everyone.
okay, cheers, guys.